Welcome to my video on the causes and effects of the American Revolution. Give it a thumbs up. Hi, so welcome to the causes and effects of the American Revolution by Madison Brading. Okay, so underlying causes, it's the causes beneath the surface. So we have the French and Indian War, Pontiac's Rebellion, which caused the proclamation of 1762, and debt led to taxes. So basically, the French and Indian War, also called the 7 Years' War, was British colonist soldiers and Native American allies. They fought against the French colonist soldiers and Native American allies, but now we think of them as Canada, but back then it was not Canada. And then they signed the earlier Treaty of Paris, which was in 63. The later Treaty of Paris that ended the American Revolution was in 83. It ends war. Oh, it might not be 83, I'm not sure, but it ends war. Great Britain gets French Canada land, and there's basically just a major shift in power, and the British they start to treat the Native Americans really poorly and restrict them versus the French colonists, who wanted to mainly do fur trade with them, like beaver hats, and they were more like wanting to get money and like build a relationship with them. And Britain was just trying to take over land. And basically, the Native Americans, how are they going to deal with this? Some of them tried diplomacy, some tried religion, and then some took a more radical approach, like attacking the new British. So basically, here continued. Britain went into major debt because of this war, and then King George III was like, yo, the colonists are benefiting, they should pay these taxes also. And so he passed a lot of acts, which we will see in the direct causes, and then he put British troops in America the colonists were forced to pay for and house. So here's Pontiac's Rebellion, here's Pontiac. So after the French and Indian War, the British occupied Native American land, and he was a Ottawa tribe leader, and he led a lot of troops against the British. They were very bloody battles, and the proclamation of 1763 was then put in to cause like preventative measures. It was a preventative measure to reduce the amount of communication colonists and Native Americans had. And it basically prevented colonists from settling westward, which is kind of nice for the Native Americans, but the colonists were pissed because they thought it was England's way of ensuring easy control of the colonists. And they also had to pay for the forts that enforced the proclamation. So basically they were paying to be trapped on the East Coast. And debt. So Britain was in an awful recession because of the war expenses of the French and Indian War. So colonists were taxed in order to make up for that debt. So direct causes, there are a lot. So wow. Okay, we'll go through those. Okay, so I've organized it into 3 separate areas. So raising revenue is number 1. The Stamp Act raised revenue for Britain. The Townshend Act did, and so did the Tea Act. So the Stamp Act was like every single piece of printed paper must be stamped, and this is like letters, newspapers, playing cards, everything. The Townshend Act was proposed by Charles Townshend. That's where they get the name, a British money manager, and it's new taxes on imported goods like lead, paper, glass, and tea. And then the Tea Act, the colonists did get tea for cheaper, but they still didn't like it because their rights were being infringed upon with a tax. They were pretty mad, and they didn't know if Britain had this power, they could easily abuse it. So this is all raising revenue. Also, direct cause was too much British involvement. So we have the Navigation Acts, which restricted colonial trade. The Declaratory Acts, it came along with the appeal of the Stamp Act. So everyone was so mad about the Stamp Acts. Then Britain, they appealed it, but then they threw in the Declaratory Act while they appealed it and basically said they have full control over all the colonies. So it was like kind of counterintuitive. They still restricted freedoms. The colonists were still pissed. And we also have the Intolerable Acts. It's just 5 acts that the colonists called intolerable, and this was a result of the Boston Tea Party. And so basically closed the Boston port until the tea was paid back. So they punished everyone versus just the people who threw the tea. They took away Massachusetts' right to govern themselves, which is kind of sad. The British government took control, and then British officials were to go to court in England. So if you had, like, a Britain official was kind of like, maybe he arrested your grandmother on no basis and was like, pay $1,000, then you were like, what the heck? But you couldn't have a trial in America. You had to go to Britain. You had to go to court in England to have a trial, which a lot of people couldn't afford. And there was no witnesses from America. And then colonists were also forced to house soldiers, which was kind of annoying, but this also inspired the Bill of Rights, saying that, like, you don't have to be forced to have a soldier, like, stay with you. And then there was one about making Quebec in Canada bigger, just, like, random. I thought that was funny, because it's, like, nobody ever talks about that one, because it's not really a reason why. It wasn't really a cause of the American Revolution. So, also, civil unrest. So this is the rebels of the colonies. So they formed the Committee of Correspondence. It's a political union of the colonies. We have the Boston Massacre of 1770. So it was a riot. But then the British kind of took things too far. Kind of like how Lexington and Concord, they just kind of like, there was one shot and then the British went off. This is kind of the same thing. So drunken sailors are throwing stuff at soldiers, and then people start throwing rocks at soldiers, and then the soldiers just, like, kill 7 people, and it was just kind of like, whoa, what? And then the political protests against paying tax on tea. That's the Boston Tea Party. And then Sons of Liberty, they dressed up as Native Americans, and they threw the East India Company tea in the harbor. And that is it. Thank you for listening.